So last night I was led to read Hebrews 10, and right at the 29th verse it says, "Of how much worse punishment do you suppose will be thought worthy who has trampled the Son of God underfoot, counted the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified a common thing, and insulted the Spirit of grace?" Talking about what Jesus did on the cross. And one of the reference verses for this goes back to Matthew 12:31, where it speaks of, Jesus says, "Every sin and blasphemy will be forgiven men, but blasphemy against the Spirit will not be forgiven men." Now I know in this context here, the Pharisees were accusing him, were saying that his work was being done by Satan, and it wasn't. But what we do with Jesus in this life matters. John 3:16 tells us that, you probably noticed, that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. One of the words that jumped out at me a while back in that verse was gave. He gave. He didn't say, "Hey, I love you." He did something. He said he gave what he delighted in, what he loved the most, what meant the most to him. He gave, so that whoever believes in him would have everlasting life. So you look at the one thing that God gave this world is what meant the most to him. And we're going to be held accountable for what we do with what he gave us, and that being Jesus Christ. Now, verse 17 in John 3 goes on to say that God sent his Son into the world not to condemn it, but that the world through him might be saved. But you go to 3:36, and it says, "He who believes in the Son will see life, but he who does not believe in the Son of God will not see life, but the wrath of God abides on him." So you have, and believe there means to entrust. It means to commit. Ultimately, it means to obey. See, many want Jesus as Savior, but not as Lord. See, in John 6:28, the Jews ask him, "What must we do to do the work of God?" And Jesus said, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him who sent me." You obey me. That's it. It's a relationship, and it's being obedient. Those who love him will obey his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. And you may ask, well, what about the people who never hear the word? Well, Romans 1 says that they are without excuse. Because in Psalms 19, it tells us that the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day into day utters speech, night into night reveals knowledge. There's no speech nor tongue or language that has not heard their voice. Their line has gone out to the end of the earth, and their words to the end of the world. The creation is preaching the glory of God. And I'm speaking because there's a lot of people who believe, but see, in James it tells us even the devils, the demons believe, but they're not saved. There are many who think they are saved, but they're not. And Jesus tells us that in Matthew 7, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of God." And that's the key, doing the will of God. And these are people who are doing wonderful things in his name, prophesying in his name, casting out demons. And he says, "I never knew you. You're a worker of iniquity." So going back, the question isn't how can a loving God send somebody to hell, but how can a holy God let us into heaven? And it's by accepting what Jesus did on the cross, by not counting what his Son did underfoot, and not counting the blood of the covenant a common thing, and insulting the Spirit of grace. The question, you're going to stand before God, and what did you do with Jesus? What did you do with my Son? And that's something to think about. We're told to examine ourselves to see if we're in the faith, because there are many who that's going to be the most shocking day, to think that you're saved and you're not. And then to find out that there is life after death. And we get so distracted from that. So the question is, what have you done with Jesus? Is he just Savior, or is he Lord of your life?